In 2003, real-time strategy games were at a crossroads. The genre that once defined PC gaming was beginning to fade. Then EA revealed an RTS grounded in modern warfare and uncomfortable political relevance. And whether you loved it or hated it, this game left a mark on the strategy genre that's still felt today. And that game was Command & Conquer Generals.
Broretro.
Laying the foundation.
I didn't discover this game the usual way. It was through my younger brother actually. He had the game and the family PC in his room. It was a beast, with a powerful Pentium processor, with a massive 256 megabytes of RAM. Those were the days, let me tell you. I was around 18 at the time, and more interested in chasing girls and going out partying with my mates. So during the week, while I was finishing college, this is what we played together. I still remember sitting in his room while we were arguing over which general was the best, completely losing track of time to the early hours of the morning. Generals became part of that in-between period of life. Not quite a kid anymore, but not an adult either. Looking back now, it's impossible to separate this game from that moment in my life, and it's definitely up there as one of my favourite RTS games of all time.
Next up, the front lines.
The series is known for its science fiction themes and the use of FMV cutscenes with their tongue-in-cheek B-movie presentation. But Generals moved in the opposite direction. Often dismissed as the black sheep of the Command & Conquer family, it grounded itself in a near-future world, built around modern militaries and isometric conflict, reflecting the political climate of the early 2000s, a decision that would eventually spark controversy. By January 2003, Westwood Studios, the team that had defined Command & Conquer from the very beginning, was shut down by EA. Much of the original talent splintered off to form a new studio, but Generals was already well into development by that point. Work on the game had begun back in late 2000, shortly after the release of Red Alert 2. Development was initially handled by Westwood Pacific before the studio was rebranded as EA Pacific, and this team would ultimately see Generals through to release. Arriving as the 7th main entry in the Command & Conquer franchise, Generals launched with 3 playable factions: the United States of America, the People's Republic of China, and the Global Liberation Army. Early design concepts suggested additional factions were considered, including African warlords, a European alliance, and even Russia. I'm sure that would have gone down really well. The Windows version released in February 2003, with a Mac version arriving in April 2004. According to industry sales charts of the time, it was the best-selling real-time strategy title of that year. The most immediate change in Command & Conquer Generals was the graphics. Utilizing the Sage engine, it brought the franchise firmly into 3D. Game assets now show real texture and detail, even down to the wear and tear as they get damaged. In addition, there's a solid sense of weight and physicality to everything on screen. The Sage engine allowed for environmental effects and even destruction physics. It's a significant leap from the sprite-based games that came before it. In a time when 3D RTS games were the norm, Generals definitely stood out from the crowd. While looking a little dated now, the graphics and visuals still managed to impress over 2 decades later. And once you strip away the politics and the controversy, Command & Conquer Generals lives or dies by its mechanics, and this is where its most radical ideas truly take shape.
Cannot we live in peace?
Generals stepped away from the well-established sci-fi universes. The change divided longtime fans, but it opened the door to something the series had never explored at this scale: fully isometrical faction warfare. At a systems level, the foundation remains classic real-time strategy. You establish a base,
Have a job for me?
secure resources,
Need a delivery, General?
produce units,
What's the mission, sir?
and then dismantle the enemy piece by piece. Victory isn't about spamming a single unit, it's about combined arms. The game constantly pressures you to read the battlefield, then pushes you to adapt. just like a general.
You are victorious.
One of my favourite features was how your soldiers could garrison almost any structure, instantly turning buildings into choke points. And pair that with loading troops into vehicles and Chinooks, you had endless options for tactical gameplay. And you can also capture buildings like hospitals and they heal your units over time.
We have their building.
The surviving units gain XP. Each rank improves their effectiveness. Units can even self-repair, creating high-value assets worth preserving. Certain units, especially on the US front, can be upgraded. You can mount a UAV drone for extended scouting, or install a self-repair system to keep the unit alive longer under fire. Where Generals truly separates itself is in its factions. The United States leans heavily into high-tech warfare, drones, and overwhelming air power. But their units are costly, and mistakes are expensive.
Unit lost.
China favours brute force, heavy tanks, long-range artillery, and even hackers who can steal funds or seize control of buildings, turning the economy into a weapon.
Their building is ours.
But their air force is weaker, and their volatile power plants can devastate nearby structures when destroyed. The Global Liberation Army plays by entirely different rules. Cheaper units and guerrilla tactics define their approach.
Armor detail reporting.
Vehicles can be upgraded by salvaging wreckage, and tunnel networks allow them to appear almost anywhere. They don't require power, but they lack aircraft and rely on fragile supply lines to stay funded.
Our homes are in peril.
Base construction is handled by mobile builder units instead of a central construction yard, allowing structures to be placed almost anywhere on the map. Resources also come from finite supply docks, forcing map control to matter. Early structures unlock the core production, while high-tier buildings open the door to late-game units and super weapons.
Congratulations, General. You have been promoted.
Layered over everything are the general's powers. As you earn experience as a general, you unlock things like airstrikes, reinforcements, unit upgrades, and faction-defining abilities that can swing battles instantly. The result is an RTS that feels fast and fully flexible. Then came 0 Hour. This expansion didn't just add more, it sharpened everything Generals already did well. It added new units, additional missions, deeper upgrades, and the introduction of Generals with unique specializations.
Sonic boom, baby.
This, to be honest, is what Generals should have been on release. Its standout addition was the Challenge mode. You select one of 9 specialist generals. From the US Air Force General to China's Infantry Specialist and the GLA's Toxic Warlord, each of them built around a highly focused skill set. You then faced other generals one by one on maps tailored to their strengths, forcing you to adapt your strategy every time. Each encounter felt like a tactical puzzle that allowed you to test build orders, counters, and map control, before ending in a final showdown against a boss commander wielding tech from all 3 factions at once. It was tough, varied, and hugely replayable, and for many players, this represents the definitive way to play the game. But beyond the mechanics, Generals also framed its battles with a global narrative, one told very differently from earlier entries in the series, and that brings us to how the game handles its story.
The battlefield is a messy place.
Unlike earlier Command & Conquer games, General steps away from the grand lore and reoccurring characters, instead presenting its conflict as a series of global flashpoints. Rather than telling a single continuous story, it unfolds through 3 separate campaigns, each presenting the global conflict from a different perspective, set in a near-future world teetering on the edge of chaos. The United States and China form an uneasy alliance to combat the Global Liberation Army, a decentralized terrorist network operating across Central Asia and the Middle East. The story is delivered through mission briefings and in-game cutscenes, keeping the focus firmly on the battlefield. It's a deliberate shift as the narrative only exists to frame the gameplay. That being said, 0 Hour took a small step backwards, at least in presentation. In an effort to reintroduce context, the expansion brought back FMV cutscenes framed as news reports designed to set the scene before missions. On paper, it felt like a return to Command & Conquer tradition. In practice, however, the execution was mixed and lacked the charm and theatrical flair of the classic games. But much of the storytelling happens during gameplay itself, through objectives, unit barks, and the environments you fight across. And it's here that Generals communicates its story most effectively. Not through dialogue, but through sound.
I think I can hear them.
The score was composed by Bill Brown and Mikhail Sandgren. The soundtrack steps away from the heavy techno style the franchise is known for and instead goes for a more grounded military sound, with different musical tones depending on which faction you're playing. The USA tracks lean into clean, bombastic military themes. China's music is heavier, built around bold percussion and orchestral weight. And the GLA's score is more chaotic, using regional instruments. It's a small design choice, but it constantly reinforces who you're playing without a single line of dialogue. The sound design does a lot of the heavy lifting too. Units are easy to recognise by sound alone, and the voice acting is another big part of the game's identity. The GLA sounds reckless and defiant.
Take us to glory.
China sounds strict and disciplined.
I built for China.
And the US forces sound confident and professional.
I'll build anywhere. Make my own road.
Many of these lines became instant and memorable and are still quoted by players today.
Oh, okay, I will work.
And with that presentation in place, it's time to look at how Generals was received by critics and players when it launched.
There is much money to be made.
Full motion video was stripped away and the series moved fully into 3D. To many, these changes felt like a betrayal of what Command & Conquer was supposed to be. They were wrong. While Generals breaks from almost everything that came before it, it stands confidently on its own as a superb real-time strategy game. When it came out in 2003, it received a mostly positive reception from reviewers. Critics praised its pacing, faction design, and modernised mechanics, and the multiplayer was highlighted as tense and rewarding. The engine's full 3D presentation was seen as a technical step forward. However, not all feedback was positive. Some fans missed the original identity, others criticised the pathfinding and the campaign's tone, and also the political framing remained divisive. The game was actually banned in China due to its betrayal of the Chinese military and certain campaign events, including the nuclear strike on a Chinese military parade. In Germany, it was placed on the list of harmful media to young people over its depiction of warfare and civilian casualties, which led to a weird edited version of the game where everyone was photoshopped to look like a cyborg. Absolutely crazy. Even so, Generals held its player base and reputation over time. Its staying power raises a fair question. Why did this entry remain so popular while Command & Conquer's future became increasingly uncertain?
I will die for our cause.
Command & Conquer for many players, myself included, is the benchmark RTS franchise. Since it debuted in 1995, it's produced sequels and spin-offs and a fan base that's remained fiercely loyal for decades. Generals carved out its own place within that legacy, helping push RTS design towards more distinctive playstyles rather than simple palette swaps. Systems like commander powers and faction specializations later showed up across strategy games and even MOBA-style hybrids. Fans hoped that momentum would lead to a true sequel, but it never happened. Generals 2 was in development and was cancelled in 2013. Even so, the game never really died. Generals, especially Zero Hour, still has an active community, and modders have kept it alive far beyond its original lifespan. The standout example is Rise of the Reds, widely considered the gold standard of Generals mods, and feels closer to an unofficial expansion than a simple mod. And to top it all off, EA surprised everyone by releasing the source code in 2025. This now opens the door fully to an updated version of the game with modern graphics, fingers crossed. Generals exists as a snapshot of a moment when RTS dared to modernise without compromise. And in many ways, it rivals Red Alert 2 for the title of best Command & Conquer game ever made.
It's the right thing to do.
That's the line an American tank delivers after blowing up a GLA terrorist in a hijacked vehicle. Completely serious and somehow absolutely ridiculous. And in that moment, it sums up Command & Conquer Generals perfectly. It landed at a turning point for RTS games, for the Command & Conquer series, and for me as well. As I said before, I was finishing college and standing right at the edge of whatever came next. And it's probably why I keep going back. It just reminds me of when times were simpler. And I think that's why Generals still matters to me. It's not the best RTS game ever made, but when that music drops, the nostalgia hits hard, and suddenly you're a general once again. If you played Generals back in the day, I would love to hear your memories, and of course I need to know who your favourite general is and why. Thanks for watching, I'll see you in the next one. Broretro out.
Unit lost.
Taking her in. Closing the distance. We fight for peace.
Spud destroyed. Baghdad secure. Congratulations, General.